Can you truly imagine the rage, the sheer disbelief, if you witnessed an adult woman strike your disabled child across the face? Now, imagine that woman had absolutely no inkling that a single phone call from you could potentially land her in a jail cell. My hands are still unsteady as I try to capture this. Just yesterday afternoon, my 12-year-old daughter, Maya, was physically assaulted by the president of our homeowners association, Brenda Hastings, right on our own property. And it wasn't a fleeting loss of control. She slapped my daughter, who relies on a wheelchair, not once, but twice, all while spewing hateful insults. My name is Sarah Chun. I've been raising Maya alone since my husband perished in a car accident 4 years ago. Maya lives with cerebral palsy and navigates the world in a specialized wheelchair, but her spirit is incandescent. She's brilliantly smart, fiercely creative, and possesses a depth of kindness I've rarely encountered. 3 months back, we relocated to Willow Creek Highlands, an affluent suburb just outside Boston. We were chasing a fresh start, better educational opportunities for Maya, and a more manageable commute for me. The events of yesterday have left me reeling, and honestly, I keep wondering what you might have done if you were standing in my shoes. Let me tell you about Maya. Life hasn't dealt her the easiest hand, but she radiates a joy that genuinely brightens any space. Her cerebral palsy impacts her mobility and fine motor skills, yet her mind is incredibly sharp. She reads far above her grade level, produces artwork that consistently earns high praise from her teachers, and displays an emotional intelligence that often gives adults pause. Her electric wheelchair, a sleek machine in a vibrant emerald green, is her key to the independence she treasures. When we first looked at the house in Willow Creek Highlands, Maya leaned over and whispered, "Mom, I think we could be really happy here." That simple sentence settled it. I pushed my budget to its absolute limit and signed the purchase agreement that same day. The house needed modifications, ramps, wider doorways, but it held promise, and the neighborhood was known for its top-rated schools with robust, inclusive programs. There was something I didn't broadcast to our new neighbors: my profession. I work as a federal prosecutor for the Department of Justice, specializing in civil rights violations. It's not something I advertise. After a long week dealing with hate crimes and ADA compliance cases, the last thing I want is to bring work home. I've witnessed some of the ugliest ways people treat the vulnerable, but I never, ever conceived that my own family, my own daughter, would become the center of a case mirroring those I prosecute. Almost immediately after moving in, we ran into friction with the HOA, specifically with its president, Brenda Hastings. Brenda, likely in her mid-50s, with flawlessly coiffed blonde hair and a perpetually sour look, embodied every negative HOA stereotype imaginable. She wasted no time making it known that the wheelchair ramp we installed, fully permitted and with prior HOA approval, was an eyesore that supposedly diminished property values. She confronted me the day after the installation was complete. I was actually quite proud of the ramp. We'd hired an architect to ensure it complemented our colonial-style house, curving gracefully alongside the garden with a neat white picket fence. It was both functional and, to anyone with empathy, aesthetically pleasing. Brenda stood at the base of it, clipboard ready, lips pursed as if she'd just bitten into a lemon. "Ms. Chan," she began, not bothering with formalities. "This structure wasn't approved by the Architectural Review Committee." Calmly, I presented the signed approval form from the HOA vice president. "Actually, Brenda, it was approved 2 weeks ago. We ensured it met both ADA guidelines and your association's regulations." She barely glanced at the paper, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently. "This is highly irregular. Mark shouldn't have approved this without consulting me." I maintained a polite but firm tone. "Well, he did." She muttered something under her breath about federal mandates not superseding Willow Creek's aesthetic standards. That should have been a major red flag. Over the next few months, I endured her passive-aggressive comments suggesting we use the back entrance to hide the ramp, sending an official notice claiming Maya's green wheelchair violated the HOA's approved color palette. Yes, she attempted to regulate the color of my daughter's essential medical equipment. "Mom, she can't actually make me change my wheelchair color, can she?" Maya asked later, her lower lip trembling slightly. "It's not like house paint," I reassured her, masking my own boiling anger. "No, sweetheart, of course not. It's not subject to HOA rules. I tried my best to maintain peace, diligently attending HOA meetings, volunteering for committees, even bringing homemade spring rolls to a neighborhood potluck, which Brenda pointedly ignored. I craved stability for Maya, so I swallowed the microaggressions. Then, one evening after a particularly tense HOA meeting where Brenda had delivered a thinly veiled rant about declining neighborhood standards while staring directly at me, an older gentleman approached me in the parking lot. "Don't let Brenda get under your skin," he said kindly, extending his hand. "Robert Miller, I live 3 doors down. Call me Judge Miller. I'm retired now. I keep telling the board they're courting a serious lawsuit with her behavior." I shook his hand, feeling a wave of gratitude. He had been supportive when I'd previously suggested investigating options for a small, accessible playground area. "Your daughter is Maya, isn't she? I've seen her drawing out on your driveway. She's quite talented. My own grandson has autism. I have some idea of how challenging the world can be for our special kids." That brief conversation offered a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our place in Willow Creek. Yesterday was a beautiful, sunny Sunday. Maya wanted to spend the afternoon creating sidewalk chalk art on our driveway, one of her favorite pastimes. Her creations are often stunningly intricate. I helped her settle into her manual wheelchair for better reach, set out her box of chalks, and went back inside to start preparing dinner, keeping an eye on her through the kitchen window. She was completely absorbed, leaning forward from her chair to sketch a vibrant hummingbird on the concrete, the blues, greens, and reds blending with a skill that belied her age. I was chopping cilantro for tacos, Maya's favorite meal, when the sound of shouting shattered the peaceful afternoon. My stomach plummeted. I recognized that shrill, grating voice instantly. Brenda. Peering through the window, I saw her standing over Maya, her face contorted in fury. Maya's small shoulders were slumped, her head bowed in a posture I knew all too well from past experiences with bullies. I dropped the knife, my heart pounding, and bolted for the door. That's when I heard it, the sharp, sickening crack of a slap, immediately followed by Maya's cry of pain and surprise. My blood ran cold. Every step towards the door felt like wading through thick mud. When I burst outside, Maya was clutching her cheek, tears streaming down her face, a bright red mark already blooming. Brenda was still looming over her, finger jabbing accusingly. "This is disgraceful. Have you any idea how this lowers property values? This isn't some inner-city playground. This is Willow Creek Highlands." For a split second, I froze, my mind struggling to process the scene. Then, as Maya sobbed, trying to explain that she was drawing on our property, Brenda struck her again, even harder this time. The sound echoed unnervingly down the quiet street. Neighbors who were gardening or walking their dogs paused, turning to stare. A woman across the street audibly gasped, "Don't you dare talk back to me, you little brat." Brenda spat. "You people always think you deserve special treatment just because you're—" She gestured contemptuously towards Maya's wheelchair, crippled. The phrase "you people" struck me like a physical blow. It wasn't just about Maya's disability. It was laced with prejudice against our Asian heritage, too. Her racism wasn't even thinly veiled anymore. A surge of pure rage washed over me, hot and fierce, but years spent in courtrooms had taught me that control is power. When adversaries lose their composure, I become calmer, more focused. I summoned that discipline now. "Step away from my daughter," I commanded, my voice dangerously quiet, icy. Brenda spun around, momentarily startled, but her indignation quickly returned. "Well, look who it is. The enabler mother. Do you have any idea what your child has done? Defacing community visible property with this graffiti." She waved dismissively at Maya's beautiful hummingbird drawing, a genuine piece of art gracing our driveway. By now, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered, several holding up their phones. Good. Witnesses. I glanced at the hummingbird, intricate wings, a delicate beak, causing absolutely no harm. "Brenda," I stated evenly, "you have just committed assault against a disabled minor. Leave our property immediately, or I am calling the police." She actually laughed, a harsh, brittle sound devoid of humor. "The police? For disciplining a child who's breaking HOA rules? I am the HOA authority here, Sarah. I decide what's acceptable, and your little troublemaker needs to learn some respect." Her sense of entitlement was staggering. I've prosecuted individuals accused of hate crimes who showed more remorse than she did in that moment. Stay right here, Maya, I instructed softly, then dashed back inside to grab my phone. I hit record as I stepped back out. In those brief 30 seconds, Maya had straightened up slightly, trying valiantly to appear brave despite the visible handprint on her cheek. The image of her quiet dignity in the face of such cruelty seared itself into my memory. Brenda was still ranting, threatening fines, property liens, even eviction all over chalk art. "This is the third violation," she shrieked. "First that hideous ramp, then that offensively green wheelchair completely outside our approved color palette, and now this graffiti." Suddenly, Judge Robert Miller appeared, his commanding voice slicing through Brenda's tirade. "Brenda, that is quite enough." He positioned himself beside Maya, placing a reassuring hand on her wheelchair handle. "You have just committed assault and battery on a minor child with a disability. That is a serious felony offense." Maya visibly relaxed a fraction. "Mind your own business, Robert," Brenda snapped, taking a hesitant step back. "This is an internal HOA matter." "Assault is never an internal matter," he countered firmly. "I presided over cases like this for 30 years. What you just did could very well land you in prison, especially with video evidence and multiple witnesses." He gestured towards the gathered neighbors, many of whom were nodding in agreement. Brenda's face flushed crimson. "Do you have any idea who I am? I have run this HOA successfully for 8 years. My husband plays golf with the governor. I saw my opening. And do you know who I am, Brenda?" She rolled her eyes dramatically. "Yes, you're the single mother who somehow managed to afford a house here." The implied somehow dripped with condescending insinuation. "Actually," I said, ensuring my phone camera was still aimed squarely at her, "I am Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Chun, assigned to the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. You have just committed what appears to be a federal hate crime against my daughter, and I have it recorded. Would you like to add threatening a federal prosecutor to the list of potential charges?" The color drained instantly from Brenda Hastings' face. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled. Beside me, Judge Miller discreetly hid a smile. You're what?" she stammered, her voice suddenly weak. "A federal prosecutor," I repeated clearly, "specializing in disability discrimination and hate crimes." I knelt beside Maya. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" She nodded, though her hands were still trembling. Neighbors began to move closer, their expressions a mixture of shock and sympathy. Diane, a woman from down the street, covered her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. "You're bluffing," Brenda whispered, grasping at straws. "Your husband knows the governor, you mentioned that," I cut in smoothly. "I'm sure he'll find visiting hours at the federal penitentiary quite inconvenient." Keeping my eyes locked on Brenda, I dialed 911. "This is Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Chun. I need to report an assault on a disabled minor currently in progress at 118 Willow Creek Drive." Brenda froze, the full weight of the situation finally crashing down on her. "Maya needs some ice for her cheek," I said to Judge Miller. "Could you possibly stay with her for a moment?" "Of course, Sarah," he replied, positioning himself firmly between Maya and Brenda. "Don't even think about leaving," I warned Brenda as I turned to go inside. "Fleeing the scene will only add to the charges." As I searched for an ice pack, I could hear Brenda's voice rising again, now laced with desperation. "This is all a terrible misunderstanding. I was simply trying to enforce HOA regulations." Judge Miller cut her off sharply. "That child's name is Maya, Brenda, and she was creating art on her own family's property." When I returned with the ice pack, a small group of neighborhood kids had gathered around Maya, asking curious questions about how she blended the chalk colors. Several adults offered her water, tissues, and words of praise for her hummingbird drawing. "Mrs. Nguyen from across the street approached me, her face etched with regret. "I should have spoken up sooner, Sarah. Brenda fined us last year for hanging traditional Vietnamese lanterns for Lunar New Year. She called them un-American." Soon after, the Kims shared how Brenda had actively tried to discourage their home purchase, citing concerns about ethnic cooking odors. A black family recounted receiving repeated fines for minor landscaping issues that white neighbors never faced. An elderly couple mentioned being fined for installing a necessary ramp after a stroke. A young gay couple confirmed Brenda had denied their request to rent the community center for their wedding reception. It was always just subtle enough, just deniable enough, that none of us felt we could challenge her effectively alone, Diane admitted. But hitting your daughter that crossed an undeniable line. A strange mix of anger and relief washed over me. I wasn't alone in this fight. Detective Michael Evans arrived shortly after, a familiar face from a previous hate crime case I'd worked on. Counselor Chun, he greeted me, shaking my hand with professional courtesy. I'm very sorry we're meeting again under these circumstances. He knelt down to speak with Maya gently, interviewing her at her level, carefully photographing the red mark on her cheek, and treating her statement with the seriousness it deserved. He meticulously collected statements from the witnesses, including Judge Miller, who provided his video recording. This seems quite clear-cut, Counselor, he murmured to me before approaching Brenda. Ms. Brenda Hastings, he stated formally, you are under arrest for assault and battery on a minor, with a potential hate crime enhancement pending review due to the victim's disability status and the statements made. As he carefully applied the handcuffs, Brenda began protesting loudly. It was just a slap. A correction. She was vandalizing property. Detective Evans' expression was one of utter contempt. Ma'am, you assaulted a disabled child, twice, on video, with numerous witnesses, on her own family's property, while using discriminatory language. She pleaded, her voice cracking. But I'm the HOA president. Detective Evans recited her Miranda rights, his voice steady and unmoved by her status. As she was led towards the police cruiser, handcuffed, Brenda Hastings's carefully maintained arrogance finally shattered, replaced by raw, undisguised fear. I pulled Maya close, whispering, "It's over now. You're safe." She was still shaking, but her eyes held a profound sense of relief. The following days were a whirlwind. Maya had appointments with doctors and victim advocates. I took an immediate leave of absence from work. Though my colleagues at the DOJ offered their full support and volunteered to handle the prosecution, I declined direct involvement. I needed to be Maya's mother first, not her lawyer. However, I made sure the assigned assistant U.S. attorney had every piece of evidence and background information necessary. Brenda was eventually released on bail but faced serious felony assault charges, carrying a potential sentence of up to 5 years, along with the separate DOJ civil rights investigation into both her actions and the HOA's potential pattern of systemic discrimination. The HOA board moved swiftly to remove Brenda from her position, issued a formal apology to my family and the community, and mandated comprehensive ADA and fair housing training for all board members and staff. The atmosphere in Willow Creek Highlands began to shift. Neighbors dropped off meals, sent cards filled with supportive messages, and even organized a neighborhood chalk art festival, with dozens of hummingbird drawings appearing on driveways throughout the community in solidarity with Maya. About a week later, Brenda's attorney contacted mine, requesting a meeting. Reluctantly, I agreed, not for Brenda's sake, but because I felt it was important for her to face Maya directly. We met at my attorney's office. Brenda, stripped of her usual impeccable grooming and air of superiority, looked diminished. She began, "I am so sorry, Mrs. Chun. I just don't know what came over me that day." I held up a hand, stopping her. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to Maya." Maya wheeled herself forward, her gaze steady as she met Brenda's eyes. "Why?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm. "Why did you hate me before you even knew me? Was it my wheelchair? Was it because we looked different?" Brenda fumbled for words. I was just so focused on the rules, on upholding standards. I wasn't thinking about people. That's not a good reason to hit someone," Maya replied simply, with wisdom beyond her years. Tears began to stream down Brenda's face as she finally, truly, acknowledged the harm she had caused. In the end, Brenda Hastings accepted a plea agreement, 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service to be performed specifically at a center serving individuals with disabilities, mandatory anger management counseling, intensive diversity and sensitivity training, and a strict restraining order preventing any contact with Maya or me. The civil settlement with the HOA resulted in a significant contribution to fund a new scholarship program for local students with disabilities. Brenda's husband, reportedly deeply humiliated by the scandal, filed for divorce. They sold their house in Willow Creek Highlands at a considerable loss and moved away. We stayed. Willow Creek Highlands slowly began to feel like the home we had hoped for. A new, more diverse HOA board took charge, actively promoting accessibility initiatives and fostering a more inclusive environment. Maya still loves drawing her chalk masterpieces on our driveway, but now she's often joined by other kids and sometimes even adults from the neighborhood. Our driveway has become a sort of rotating community canvas, a small testament to the fact that things can change when people refuse to stay silent and choose to stand up for what's right. Just last month, Maya received a special commendation from the mayor for her emerging role as a young disability advocate. In her brief acceptance speech, she said something that resonated deeply with everyone present. Sometimes, bad things have to happen so that good things have space to grow, kind of like how forest fires can help new trees sprout. I never want anyone else to be hurt like I was, but I'm glad that something beautiful could grow out of it. My daughter, my hero, Maya,